Hi, this is the Christic cell SUPERASTRAL fulfilled. Previously, I showed you how my pictures fulfill the prophecies of the instant and the era of the Grey Men, which reveals the advent of the Christic cell. So now, let's look at more supernatural manifestations of this. I already gave you a brief comment of how the Illuminati in my city painted murals in the places where I filmed the series. One with the 666 eye symbol staring directly at the tree from the exorcism scenes, the other at the corner of the square where I filmed much of the series. But now, let's take a look at the sample with a little more detail. As usual, I use pictures and videos with documented dates to prove that I created them before their fulfillment. To avoid pausing the video, every time I need to show a date, I leave them in the backup list. To start, we see that the giant head, which seems to be a woman's, but is actually my virtual clone from the pilot episode of the series. From the upward looking position, the distance and the shape of the ear, the wavy hair at the nape, the mole, the line crossing the mural copies the branches of my series. You can even see it painted with yellow dots like in my series, like in my scene. And behind it, we can clearly see what looks like an Illuminati Homer, which is a copy of my scenes of the Grey Men where the old man watches me from behind, and also of the hologram of the Grey Men. All match perfectly. There is even a cartoon of a little demon, like the Tasmanian one I had on my shirt. It can be seen in my scenes and in Google that the painting was made after my series. I overlay my pictures to make it clear that it is identical. That little cartoon where I am live was also fulfilled in the monument. That mural was fulfilled at the monument when I appeared, with the same head in the same position and expression, also the same direction of the sunlight and the line that crosses it all, with the great black rectangle behind, followed by the white peaks, etc. That picture of a woman seemingly trying to eclipse me would be fulfilled years later in the manifestation at the monument, when I would stand in front of the camera fulfilling my series and Paravicini's prophecies about Argentina's manifest destiny. That picture of a woman with black and white behind her, copying my scenes of the Grey Men, is also a reference to Paravicini's prophecies about the Grey Men. As I have already shown, there is a woman in reference to the revolution, but although he mentions a man, none is seen, only a beard, because it represents the new men or humanity with the power of astral projection. You can see that the painting of the Christic cell, which was fulfilled in the monument, contains details of the Annunciation and paintings of God, revealing the invisible forces of that day and beyond. And as I have already shown, these prophecies would later be copied by the Bank of America, which would be fulfilled at the monument. The bank made that mural as if it anticipating its fulfillment in reality. In other words, when someone made those pictures real, it meant that the prophecies had been fulfilled, and the Christic cell had entered the world, heralding the return of the Creator. The Illuminati may think that they are watching me, but I am watching them too. There is much more to show, but that's the basic part. Second, it was in the news that this square was recently remade, and they repainted the bridge from white to violet under the excuse of Women's Day or whatever other scam from the satanic government and these minion puppets. But the violet paint with white linings is actually identical to the superastral projections from my episodes, right over the same bridge. And they moved the playground equipment right next to the bridge, exactly where people were gathered for the projections. How cute, they even had a big screen like in my series. But the most extraordinary part is that they placed them precisely in the same spot where I had made a draft sketch, one I hadn't even published. The entire design has the same form as my pictures, even with the luminaries. And in the playground, there is a violet tower and giant plants, just like in my previous videos on Paravicini's prophecies about giant vegetation. Here I show you the date, which is earlier, and I will leave this video in the backup list for documented verification. And in the end, the Major is standing exactly where my holograms of the Major are. The actor in my series is named Daniel, and the one in the interview is named Pablo, just like my name, Pablo Daniel. On Google Maps, you can see that before 2020 there were these campaign billboards next to the square. Then my series was fulfilled and he became part of my pictures, just like the rest of the world. At that exact moment, they hand over a blue folder with drawings of the demon while peeking from behind, just like in my scene of the Grey Man. At that moment, they gave him a drawing featuring a Tasmanian demon, resembling my shirt and the Grey Man. That picture they gave him is a copy of a video about the legend of the Grey Phantom Demon of Tanzania that I had saved on my computer. Just like in my series, where they copied things I hadn't even published. The channel that uploaded that video is now censored, like many others. Remember, like my series begin with some entity copying my pictures that were hidden in my computer and in my mind. And right at the moment behind, a child appears wearing a shirt with the skull of a Tasmanian devil. What a coincidence! I clarify that I am not saying that the mural or the remodeling of the square was done in my favor or as a result of my projections. Quite the opposite. For starters, I am in the mural they copied me, but as a woman. And on the bridge, they copied me, but celebrating feminism. Those who have been following me for a while know that I am not a misogynist nor a male supremacist, but feminism is pitiful, and it will end. I have seen evil take the form of both men and women equally, so I know that these government agendas come from the same devil. The same devil that made so many movies and rituals copying me in reverse to cast a shadow over me did the same thing here. Can you imagine an existence just obsessed with copying someone else? The spirit of the earth, the matrix that imprison us. It seems that the consciousness that has been stealing my pictures and trying to delete me. The spirit that worship in the synagogue of Satan, the Shekinah. It seems like it's terrified of me. The ones who did this are probably thrilled with their dream come true, but they're just another copy of my work, like so many multi-million-dollar productions. If it was done in my favor, they should have just given me the money to me, but no. As always, there is much more, but that's the basic. The last thing I showed you about the square is the most important, and for those who are new, I warn you, this is not made with artificial intelligence. Those who have been following me for a while already know that I will never create such a forgery, and that it's unnecessary, as I have documented impossible pictures becoming real long before AI even existed that can do that. In fact, I was the only one who announced that AI would take that leap. Regardless, as always, I leave the videos with documented dates in the backup list. Alright, do you remember when I showed you that the Queen copied my tree of light? Well, after seeing that, I returned to the tree to check on it, and to my surprise, I found as if it had been attacked. At first, I thought someone had deliberately damaged it, but then I discovered that the shape of the deformation was exactly identical to the projection of my picture. The tree splits open into a hole exactly in the same spot as the energy orb, took on the same reddish hue, and in the very bark you can see the shape of my astral projections, the same height above my head, the shape of the torso, the exact arm position, and even the details of the colors and head. You can clearly see that the wood has the same shadows and tints as my face, and it's at the same height as my head. In fact, you can already see the picture forming in the tree in the first video, as if it had been projecting the picture even before, because I had already been projected to do it on that tree. You can also see the heart shape from my meditation. In fact, next to this tree, there is another one that has exactly the shape of a heart. This tree is even the one aligned behind me in the pilot episode, where I am wearing the Tasmanian shirt. And on top of that, within the same picture, the Tasmanian cartoon appears in the same position, holding a bat formed by the tree's own sap. The Tasmania shape in the tree is aligned at the same height as my shirt. You can also see Bugs Bunny there, because the demon is not important, but because the rabbit is grey, and my series was about the prophecies of the grey man, and the grey painter, that can paint reality. Also, above the Tasmania you can see my giant face. The face with the open mouth is identical to my other scene against a tree. You can see that the tree took on that shape. Additionally, from one side, you can see my own face again, which is only visible because it forms from several separate parts to be visible from only one angle. This is what is called an anamorphic illusion, but in this case, supernatural. At the center, there is a fractal-like face, just like the prophecies about humanity's astral unfolding and telepathy. And you can see that the tree also fulfills the picture of the tree hand from Paravicini's prophecy of the grey man, even with the beard on the thumb. In the 2010 series, you could see that there was already a sculpture of a tree with hands in that square. But that's just an extra coincidence since it was humanly carved and not supernatural like mine. And in the middle, the figure of the painting from the prophecy of the grey man. This is also the painting of the Christic cell, something the size of a drop of paint, but with the power to change the entire painting. In the shape of the Christic cell, it also fulfills the prophecy of the new beginning, of the new being, the new creation, the new man. That unites the unreal with the real, bringing the 12th hour, the end of all ends. The God particle within a living cell. Christic cell fulfill. This also fulfilled the prophecies of the end times of the living tree, tree of life. If it reminds you of Pac-Man, which came out later in the 80s, 4 years before I was born, it's because the Christic cell influences everything. The skull on the shirt is also identical to the one from Bosch Apocalypse, which I have already shown. And it is positioned right next to the living tree, just like in the painting, which also has the same shape of the broken shell of an egg. It seems like that is the only safe place in the entire apocalypse. Even the tree bark turned grey, and although a storm recently destroyed many trees, this one remained intact. Even from a distance, you can see that it's one of the tallest trees, and it even looks like they copied its shape in the ceremony of the Tree of Light. This is what is known as hybrid picture. But achieving all this in this way, in this tree, people and everything else requires a super-dimensional artisan. Don't come telling me it's an optical illusion, apophenia, or pareidolia, because the face in the drawing is crystal clear, with the little eyes, the snout, the ears and mouth, etc. Perfectly clear. It is actually the opposite. Anyone who denies this is crazy or evil. And denying this supernatural truth, just like they denied the truth about the whole recent fraud, will lead those people to live in hells until they go away. Anyone who goes there can see this tree, and it's even on Google Street View. You can see how the shape changed and evolved across time. And I'll leave a backup before they delete it. For a very important reason, my pictures began to fulfill before AI could falsify them. I'll show the sequence of pictures of the tree changing before and after my series to highlight the transformation. There is much more to reveal, but that's the basic part. This adds to all the fulfillments, the projections, the dreams, the movies, and the prophecies. A thought becomes a drawing, a painting, a mural, a graffiti, a tree, a new man, a new reality, a new world. As I showed last time, this is a manifestation of the Creator Spirit Father impregnating Mother Earth. What's next? My face on the moon? On the sun? In the clouds? But it is just a tree. The important part is the revelation of spiritual power over matter, as this is not the only place where it has happened. How is all this possible? This proves that all this that I show with effects is real. Can you imagine if I use this to attack someone? If the tree ended up like this, what would happen to a person? By the way, that square is where I did the first special effect, which was later fulfilled like so many others. This even surpasses the Truman Show. Everything I am showing you is equivalent to Neo destroying the Matrix, but in reality, those who have seen Super Astral movie already show that the last Matrix copied me too. A painting is just cheap colors on wood and metal, but the important thing here is the spiritual reality I am revealing behind it. But this constant inverted copying of me has a biblical meaning too. It says, you turn things upside down, as if the potter were considered equal to the clay. Shall the tin form say to the one who formed it, you didn't make me? Can the pot say to the potter, you know nothing? If with a drawing I can shape a tree, couldn't there be a God who shaped humans from the earth itself and gave them life with his spirit? This would essentially be a spiritual spectrogram of the Word became flesh. And so, the end is like the beginning. The other thing that can be seen in the tree is another demon, but not the one from Tasmania, rather the one from Dante. You remember how I showed you that the secret cults are devoted to the devil, and how through these supernatural manifestations I reveal the two invisible worlds? Well, if a spiritual force can give shape to hundreds of people, a wall, and a tree on the other side, there may be a world full of creatures like that waiting for many living wicked beings. But there is something greater than the demon. Now, do you remember how in 2010 I made a series that came true, and in 2021 I said an artificial intelligence was coming that would create realistic movies in seconds, and it also came true? Now everyone is getting used to the idea, but back then no one expected it, not even the experts, not even its programmers, and most people don't realize that they have a magical artifact in their hands. You press a button, and voila! Mysteriously, it creates whatever you imagine in an instant. Well, now, think about how I show you with the people, the sky, and the movies, and the tree, and project it into the very near future. A power where one presses a button and can create supernatural creatures and realities in seconds. Oh, do you think it's not possible? Think again. Now think about your souls. Parravicini clearly revealed in his prophecies who the Antichrist is. but no one had realized it until now, because these revelations belong to me. So, Antichrist, goodbye. To finish, let's make a projection against the experiment inside so many. If this can make so many things real, surely it can change that too. Since there is no other solution, let's make a projection to cleanse the contaminated blood. Shall we? Be gone!